let's talk about it.
Hello and welcome back to Thicc Radio, the podcast where we talk about gaining, feedism, and everything in their orbit. I'm James.
And I'm Tim, so let's get into it. Today we're welcoming to the guest for the first time. Today we've got Rubens.
Hi.
Hello, how are you today?
Pretty good. Exciting to be on the radio.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you so much for joining us. This is a real pleasure. It's funny, I was reading a book not too long ago, a book titled Feederism, written back in 2015, by Kathy Charles and Michael Pekowski. And it's interesting reading through that book, because at the time, this seemed to be one of the only documents that seemed like published to do with gaining. And it mentioned Extreme Feeding, this website that magically I'd not really heard of before. But then I asked him about it. I was like, have you heard of this? He's like, yeah, it's been around forever, and this guy. And I was like, okay. Did a bit of research, did a bit of Googling, and there you were. And I thought, do you know what? You've been around doing this for a fair while now. Like, when did you actually start with Extreme Feeding?
Actually, 1999, I think, or 98.
Oh my God.
And yeah, so it's like, I think it's even in the headline, helping you gain since 1999 or something.
Wow. I mean, look, I'm not trying to date people here, but I was 7 years old and very invested in Pokemon at that point in my life. So goddamn, you have been out here doing the thing for a minute. So God bless. And so you are the eponymous Rubens, which is fantastic. But Rubens, I think you said, is not actually your real name. Where did you get the name Rubens from?
Well, I was originally thinking about a name, and like how rock bands do it. Sometimes you just don't have no idea, and you just see a bus drive past, and you see something written on the bus, and then boom, you take that one. So in my case, it was just I figured, who is a synonym for somebody that likes fat people? Oh yeah, that there's this painter, this guy Paul Rubens, I think it was called, and so I just picked that.
Fantastic. And this, of course, is where we get the term Rubenesque, which is a way of describing a gorgeously full-figured, typically female, but wonderfully full-figured individual.
Yeah, so I figured back then, I figured, oh, this guy's super famous. He's basically like Picasso or something. No, he's actually like, not a lot of people know him, and so usually people don't even get the reference, but
yeah. He's not one of the, well, he is one of the well-known Renaissance painters, but it's like if you said Caravaggio, more people know about him than they do about Rubens.
And then Renaissance, it's like one period, right? And so there's lots of painters, and some did marketing better than others.
Ain't that the truth? Sometimes the best fall to the wayside for no fault of their own. So listen, we're talking today not just about Extreme Feeding, which is this site, blog that you've created, but we really want to talk about that kind of journey you've been on as well. Because as I say, you've been around for a minute doing what you do, and I think it's a good opportunity to sort of dig through that a bit and kind of bring it to the fore. So before we go much further, I want to ask, for the people who maybe are listening and do not know, what is Rubens Extreme Feeding?
So originally, the way I started, and I can recommend that to anybody, if you want to figure this stuff out. And because in the beginning, when you deal with it, you might still kind of fight it, and you're not comfortable with it really. It's really a part of you, but you're kind of like, oh, what is this? It's kind of weird, And in my case, it's connected with sexual energy. So then you cannot ignore it because it's really exciting. But then on the other side, it can be kind of weird. So what I did was I started to write stories. And in the beginning, because I was really embarrassed about it and didn't want to show anybody. And it's really funny, like I really didn't even want people to find it. Let's say I died, so I encrypted it, like the super heavy encryption, whatever. But I noticed that when I read the stories or when I wrote them, that it was kind of like reflecting on what I liked. So I wrote it out, read it back in, and the driving force was really sexual energy. It was exciting, it was arousing, and so that was the first step. So it was like revealing myself to myself, and to kind of, I guess, get used to that and like it and accept it, and which is kind of weird. Like, why would you want to need to be acquainted with something that you are, but that's how it is, because we none of us gets a manual when we get born. We all have basically no clue who we are, so we have to find out. The second step was that I started publishing it on the internet, and that was really dicey. Like, at first I thought, oh my God, people are gonna kill you, they're gonna send you hate mails and whatever, and blame war. Well, back then it didn't even exist, and I was surprised. I got a lot of feedback from people that said, wow, I like this too. And the name Extreme Feeding, it's actually perfectly fitting, because it is. It's extreme. It's it's the most extreme there is, and it flows like crazy. And I've noticed that on the other side, when somebody reads it, it comes back out, and it just blows their mind. I mean, people that really like this. Yeah, the website is, I mean, it's text. I wish it was a little more than that, but it's just, again, the illustrations.
We've talked a little bit, we've actually done an episode about Gain of Fiction. I feel like the conversation around fiction doesn't get to happen as much, right? And yet for many of us, fiction was the birthplace. I mean, for goodness sake, when we talk about Warren Davis, yes, we think of the artwork that he did, but baby, the stories. Can we talk about Belly Boy with a Badge, Doughboys, every single one, just absolute masterpieces. So you are a part of that legacy, of fiction and literacy that I think really informs how many of us in the community have come to understand our gaining period, which I think is very powerful.
It's very fascinating to me, like the whole art piece thing, that then the people that read it, they kind of own it, because I saw once a documentary about George Lucas, and it was like the people versus George Lucas. I was like, what's going on there? What? And I learned through that. I said, all right, so people that watch your artwork, they own it too, because they're part of the equation. So that means if I go and revise my stories, I can't, or I shouldn't, because they are what they are, with everything, warts and all, flaws and all. And what I would do is I would do a revision of a new one.
I want to ask, like, what was the response like from people over the years with regards to your work?
Again, exactly to that point, I noticed that some people grew up with it. They read it, and and that's very interesting. They read it over and over and over and over and over again. And that's very fascinating to me. And it's kind of rewarding too, because I notice, okay, so the stuff I do makes a difference. And some people told me this was the formative experience. Like, I learned all this stuff. So I provocate in tales, like, or in stories, where I sometimes like break the fourth wall and just say, isn't that exciting? Yeah, I like it too. And isn't that fascinating, or whatever? I've kind of noticed a pattern that I had back then too, where you go kind of like the sexual energy grows, and then you love it, and you're excited about it, but you kind of don't want to be really, you don't accept it. So what happens is you just basically have an orgasm, and then nothing, and then you just push it away and say, I don't want to, like, no, this is weird, kind of, I don't want to see it, till next time your sexual energy rises again, and you love it again. And I went to that place many, many years ago, where I'm in this level all the time. So I live with it. For me, it's normal, and I do not think it's weird. I think it's normal. It's just, thing is, sexuality, everybody has something else that they get off at, and anything exists. Doesn't matter what it is, and I don't think that one thing is better than another. It's just an expression of, I think, human creativity, that people like all different things when it comes to sex, or sexual energy. What turns them on?
I mean, I kind of want to throw to Tim here for a second, because I know you're quite the purveyor of some good bits of fiction. I mean, like, what makes the difference between good fiction and not so good fiction for you?
I'm really into instant transformation. I've always found that kind of hot because it reminds me of the cartoons that I watched as a kid that, kind of like gave me that flutter in my stomach. Also
So
because
quick, when it happens, very quick.
yeah, like a rapid sort of inflation of fat, where you've got the buttons bursting open and the seams splitting, and either the character is really into the transformation or is like frightened by the transformation, because that's usually the most popular thing. I'm also a big fan of macro, so like a lot of stories that I read often combine those two elements. And then some of the ones that are like, I don't really get into the long-term stories, the ones where like every chapter is like a different point in the gainer's life, and it's just like it's much more of a natural, like a normal progression. I like things that are kind of wily and out there.
To pivot a little bit here, because I know that you've also got a YouTube channel where you post these videos of you, and if I can describe it, like, it's you typically on a bit of a walk, it's you outside, kind of sharing your thoughts. I want to know, like, what inspired that approach to, I suppose, journaling, in a sense. What inspired that as it differs from, posts to the website?
I would say again, I know that less and less people read, especially in a time of TikTok. How can, stories keep up? I don't know. I would figure, people will still read, but it's just, there's some people, I'm sure they look at my website and go like, oh my God, so much, and they fall off their chair and they go, oh, I can't read all that stuff. I have people that I chat with, and if I write more than like 2 sentences, they're like, I can't read all that. That's like too much text, and or I don't know, I'm not sure. Here in the US, I think people are a little sensitive towards people talking at them, trying to sell them something, like, oh, there's somebody listening, so I'm gonna sell. And so they hate that. But for me, it's always a conversation. I always I always want to know what the other person thinks about that. I want to get the reaction. That's kind of why I do it, So YouTube was the thing to make it more visual, to make it more accessible. The thing that I'm really good at is, I guess, ad-libbing or improvising. So I usually never write down notes, and I possibly couldn't even follow the notes, whatever. And the thing is, I also wanted to make it more real, to kind of show people I'm a normal average person. And then, because some people probably think, they say, oh, a feeder, oh, feedy, oh, they must look weird. Oh, they must be so. Oh, no, they're just ordinary people. And there's a lot more of us than you'd think.
It's interesting you say that. I think it's something that we comment on a fair bit on the pod, like even so far as having you on as a guest, like, we always make a point to say we're not using people's images, we're not necessarily using people's real names, but obviously, like, we're not making any voice edits to people's voice. And obviously at the end of the podcast, we will always ask, what are your social media links? Where can people find you online? We're making it so that people are becoming more accessible to the world. And that's not for everyone. Totally fair. But also, things don't change unless people take a step, take a chance that things might one day be different, So it swings and roundabouts. But again, that's why we talk to people like yourself who are out here and doing these types of things. And I think it's very clear to see that there is a sense for you, this normalizing of there's this normalizing of this thing within you. I think, as you said at the very beginning, there's almost this laughable moment of, why should I have to normalize this thing which is already normal to me? But I think, akin to the story you tell about how you write a story and people feel a sense of co-ownership of it, we feel the same thing and need to justify and co-own our own lived experience, especially amongst other people. So I want to mention here, you've been interviewed in Germany on the radio, I believe it is. Is that right?
Uh-huh.
And
several times, yeah.
Several times. I mean, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what was that process like? How did they find you? Did you go to them? What did you talk about? Was it a positive experience? Walk us through it.
Mm-hmm. So in Germany, I'm quasi-famous because I have the only German feeding website on the planet that is in German, and that has lasted because there have been many others, and they always keep dying. After a few years, boom, and they're gone. So they know my website. So if they look around, they see my website, and mostly it's been on sexual radio broadcasts or whatever, and mostly kind of what would you call deviant, and I really don't like that name. I wish we could get rid of it one day, and the last one I had, actually, she was really was a woman. She was really fascinated with it because she really didn't know anything about it, and I said, all right, okay, so I'm going to explain it to her. What's the thing about it? Because she kept asking, so why is this so exciting and what's going on, and in the end I could make her understand what this is, because again, I've thought about it so many years, and I kind of figured out what and why and how and whatever.
Yeah, so as you say, they found you in the online space. It was the site in German, and you had the opportunity to really communicate on that scale, like what gaining in feedism means to you and that kind of implication. I mean, did you receive much response after that time, or did it kind of not necessarily go too far?
No, that's the problem. Again, it's pretty much, there's nothing. I might years back, years later, I might hear somebody say, "Oh, I've heard you do that interview," or whatever, but that's it. So the fame or recognition or something is kind of not. I'm kind of really frustrated about that. So because I know that the reach or influence that I have is very minimal. At least that's how it feels.
Tim, you talk about this quite a bit, especially in relation to the podcast, because, admittedly, we put the call out every episode. If you want to write to us, if you want to talk to us, do that. And,
Uh-huh.
there is engagement that happens to an extent, but we see the numbers, and
Yeah.
let's say that the engagement is not nearly as high as what you might expect it to be based on those numbers. I mean, Tim, to throw to you here for a second, like, do you feel like that ever impacts on you in any type of way, where there's an expectation of a response, or maybe you think, oh, there's a particular episode and then there isn't much of a response, and how does that?
I think, like, in the very beginning, I was a bit naive. I thought that more people would be interested and engaging, and they'd actually, either say, "Oh, I'd love to be on," or at least give suggestions or whatnot. But I guess I should have known better, because I had been on Grommr for like 10 solid years before I finally hit like over 2,000 followers. So no, 1,000 followers. I think it took me 10 years to get to 1,000 followers. Um, so I should have realized that the response is usually slow, unless you have a very specific kind of aesthetic and you are presenting yourself in such a way in a visual medium, because that's what people prefer. I wish, and like James was saying, people do write in. They do leave comments. They leave messages. I wish it was a little bit more. It'd be nice to know that more people were getting involved in the conversation. But I'm very grateful. I don't want to make it sound like I'm not grateful for the people who have reached out. I'm very, very grateful for that. It's even if it had only been one person, like if in this entire time that we've been doing this, if only one person wrote in to say thank you, it's worth doing.
And that's also why I started the YouTube thing, because I thought, it's easier accessible, maybe that's more successful. YouTube is a problem though, because I have to be very careful. I just got reprimanded recently, and they said, you've just lost features because you've violated the community guidelines. Which ones? They don't say, here, read through. There's like 300 of them,
Yeah, they never tell you, do they? And the punishment is always so swift and so severe.
Yeah, so
Like,
the thing is, I have a thing, I can't make any money off YouTube. So YouTube also no money, nothing, zero, because it's 18 plus, and then all monetization dies. And the thing is, I wonder to myself, if one day I just got the whole thing dies. and all my work is going to be lost. YouTube's just going to say, oh, you're banned, blah. Everything delete. And they even delete your email. You lose your email too. You lose everything. It's like, oh, crap, So the thing is, for me, I wondered, YouTube is very accessible. Everybody knows YouTube, but I do not think this is the channel for me at all. This is not a good venue. And I think I should switch to something that is actually without censorship,
Well, this is where podcasting honestly comes into quite an interesting genre, right? Because it is just audio, so there's not necessarily a visual element. A lot of video podcasts are much of a thing now. These opportunities we take to find ways to express ourselves in this more accessible format. Tim, you look like you wanted to say something there.
Well, I was gonna say this. You know how you said that like there's not a whole lot of safe for work content in the gainer sphere. I would argue there actually is, but the problem lies in because you think about so many gainers that we know where nudity and sexual penetration are not really their main forte. That's not really what they're looking for. Like for so many of us, our version of porn is someone playing with their belly or stuffing their belly or doing, and like no genitals get exposed. But because Google has set up this this parameter for like, if this much skin is showing, it must be nudity. That way they're not actually like looking at the pictures, they're letting a computer make the decision.
That's how they get me. That's how they get me.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like yes, as a assigned male, your chest will be exposed, but that's not considered nudity. But again, this algorithm sees that this much percentage of your skin is exposed, so you must be naked. And this is like that fat phobia that you and I talked about, James, where even the computers have been programmed to be fat phobic.
I hate censorship. I really hate censorship. I think people should be able to say whatever they want sexually, okay? In the sexual space, just say whatever you want. And I hate being censored. I really do hate it. And the thing is, when I record my videos, I don't think about what I'm going to say. I think about what I'm going to show. And sometimes I get a little too extreme. So the last video, I can kind of imagine what it was,
A lot of your work, I guess, then over the years has been about this idea of normalizing gaining and feeding in the public space. And just as a sort of last question here, I want to ask you, do you feel like you've noticed any shift in that since you started producing work?
Sometimes I wonder if anything has improved. I guess it's maybe a little hard to tell because people don't talk. Maybe there is a transformation. I see now that the beauty ideal has changed a little, and that, for example, they show BBWs in fashion magazines. I was like, wow, because I remember getting a catalog for BBWs, basically plus size women, laundry, and then I open it and I go, where? What? There's no. These people, these women are all thin. Is this make believe, or I have to imagine how it looks, And so that has shifted a little. What have your experiences been in that respect when you think about the very beginning and how it is now?
I wish that censorship didn't rule everything. I wish that people who are that afraid of their children being exposed to something would invest in things like programs that block specific websites, or just deny their children access to a computer, or, again, monitor what they're looking at on their phones. Because the whole reason censorship comes in the first place is because some parents get up and start screaming, my kids are being exposed to perversions. Well, you know what? I grew up in the age before internet and we had HBO, so I was exposed to it too. I really don't understand this push towards it's everybody else's responsibility to keep the airways clean and neat and pristine. I thought the whole point of creating separate platforms and separate streaming services and separate things was so that people who want uncensored art can get it. And now those lines are like completely blurred. Society's like, no, nobody can have anything anymore. No one's allowed to have anything that they want. Everybody's got to be miserable. Everyone's got to be unhappy.
It's the advertisers, really. Like in YouTube, for example, they have a thing, YouTube shows something, and then an advertiser goes, oh my God, my ad was shown in that. That's horrible. I don't want that. Like, I'm going to cut the whole budget. You're going to lose billions. And then YouTube says, all right, okay. So that's how it works, And the thing is, and then I always say, well, okay, there's no advertisement on 18 plus YouTube stuff. Why not?
My answer to the question on whether or not there's been any change in the community, I do feel like there has been over time. I think, the advent of social media and the internet, of course, has made things easier and more accessible. And I do think that reflecting on things like what you've created are a great example that there has been a great journey from where we have been to where we are now. And I think there is still such a place for it, and I think it's wonderful that, what you've created is reaching people in places of the world where maybe a lot of the community isn't making effort to reach out to, for the German-speaking audience, creating something there. We interviewed with Ugo from El Gainer, which, focuses specifically on the Latin American and Spanish-speaking aspects of the gaming community, so it's wonderful to know that there are multiple languages happening. There are multiple variations happening that really explore gaming and feedism and put it out there to the wider world. And so to that point, I want to say thank you. Thank you for the work you've done. Thank you for your contributions. And thank you for being here today. It's been a pleasure. Now, where can our listeners find you online?
Well, the website, so extremefeeding.com. And there's a contact section. I actually, I don't have a contact page. I should probably have a contact page where I show, I list all the social, connections, because I have different names on different networks and whatever. But actually, I would have to think about that more.
Well, there you go.
Good
So
question.
if you wish to reach out to Rubens, you can therefore reach out to him through his website, extremefeeding.com. But that is it for another week here on Thicc Radio. Please remember to like and subscribe, rate us 5 stars, and leave us a good review. Now, if you liked this episode, the podcast, or just us in general, share it with your friends and encourage them to tune in. You can find me on Instagram, BeefyFrat, Stuff and Show, and Oh My Nom at stannnum.
And you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, and BeefyFrat at ThickyMouse. You can also look us up on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Thicc Radio, or at our website at www.podpage.com/Thicc Radio. If you want to submit a voice note, you can find the link in the show notes. And if you have any questions or ideas for episodes, you can reach us at thethicradio@gmail.com. So until next time, bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Bye, Fats.
Let's talk about it.
Thicc Radio is a Patreon and Enter app podcast produced by Stan and Thicky Mouse.
Mixed and mastered by stannnum.
Our artwork is provided by Lokitu.
Our theme song is provided by Spotify.